any of the other stuff. So we'll see. Before we get to that, who would like to read Mark chapter 1, verses 21-28? Ben, you got that? Ephesians 6, 10 through 12. Miss Pam? John 1, 9 through 13. You read it? All right. Get it for me? All right. So, verses 1 through 20, I believe. Yep. It says, they came to the country of the Gerasenes. And when Jesus had stepped out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit. He lived among the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, even with a chain. For he had often been bound with shackles and chains, but he wrenched. No one had the strength to subdue him, neither crying out and cut himself with stones. And when he saw Jesus from afar down before him, and crying out with a loud voice, he said, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, my God? I adjure you by God, do not torment me." For he was saying to him, "Come out of the man, unclean spirit." And Jesus, he replied, "My name is Anani." And he begged him earnestly not to sell the country. Now a great herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside, and they begged him, saying, "Seven spirits came out and entered the pigs, and about 2,000 rushed down the steep bank into the sea and drowned in the sea. The herdsmen fled and told it in the city and in the country, and people came to see what it was that had happened. And they came to Jesus and saw the one who had the legion sitting there, clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. And those who had seen it described to them what had happened to the demon-possessed man and to the pigs. And they began to beg Jesus to depart from their region. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed with demons begged him that he might be with him. And he did not permit him, but said to him, "Go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you, and how he has had mercy on you." And he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and everyone marveled. First of all, I went to one of the places where they said the site of this, but I don't think the argument against it is there's no lake close by. Maybe there was 2,000 years ago, but there's a place in Jordan called Gerasene. And of course, Jesus is cross territory, and Jordan would be Gentile territory. So that part of it lines up. I say I've been there. And so what's all you can say. They certainly make the claim in the city of Gerasene. But one of the interesting things about Gerasene is it's some of the most wonderful anywhere, including in Rome. In fact, my friend that I was visiting, he's in ruins. So, and there was several churches. So Gerasene might not have been the place where this happened, but it wasn't too far away. Churches that had cropped up within the first few centuries after Jesus. Of course, their whole church wasn't standing, but there were still some pillars. There were mosaics on the floor that they have unearthed archaeologically. In the neighborhood of where all this happened. Don't know if I actually stepped, but I was. This is the beginning of, like it says, like he crosses over, heads into Gentile territory. And yet, here's the thing. His Gentile ministry begins very much like his Jewish ministry. All right, who has Mark chapter 1? Ben, if you'll read Mark chapter 1, 21 through 28 for me.
Then they went into Capernaum, and immediately on the Sabbath he entered the synagogue and taught. And they were astonished at his teaching, for that he taught them as having one authority and not as the scribes. Now there was a man in their synagogue with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, saying, "Let us alone, do with you, Jesus of Nazareth. Did you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be quiet and come out of him." And when the unclean spirit had convulsed him and cried out with a loud voice, he came out of him, and they were all amazed, so that they questioned among themselves, saying, "What is this? What new doctrine is this? For what authority he commands even his own to obey him?" And immediately his fame spread throughout all the region around Galilee.
Okay, so Jewish territory. Okay. So in Mark chapter 1, Baptist, you've seen the baptism of Jesus, disciples, and then God in Capernaum, he's teaching, and this is the first miracle. Different types of miracles. There's exorcisms, there's healings. I mean, the form that you perform, baptism, where the voice, the sin of the Holy Spirit, that's certainly miraculous, but Jesus is the recipient there. Like he's the one that the Spirit is descending on, the voice speaking to him. That's in John. I think I'm not saying it didn't happen, but what I'm saying is that I think there's a point to be made. In Mark's gospel, and Cana happened, all that stuff. I think the first thing that he does for the Jews and the first thing he does for the Gentiles, exercise. Man, them Jewish demons sound a lot like them Gentile demons. The point I'm making. Jew or Gentile doesn't really matter in Jesus' way. Like the Jews say, well, we might have sick and we might need some of those exorcisms like you Gentile people do. Jews got possessed. Yeah. Like they're all on level ground is one thing I'm saying. Like Jew and Gentile alike, Jesus is going to both of them and he's treating them the same way. He's having to deal with the same issues in both places. And so there's no separate two. It's not like, oh, well, us Jews got it pretty much together. It's you Gentiles that really need help. It's setting us up to see that Jesus is taking with this. I mean, to put it in Paul's words, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. It didn't say all Gentiles have sinned. It said all, which includes Jews and Gentiles. The same needs are present in both groups, Jew and Gentile. And so Jesus shows up, and the very first he does with the Gentile, just like the very first thing he does with the Jews, is he's exorcising a demon. If you had to map, if you will, the relationship between the man, the demons, and Jesus, like how conceptualize it, if you will.
The demon recognized God.
Yes. Yeah, so who does the man answer to? Paul, right? If you're he's the bottom of the pecking. Then even the demon, Jesus. And so sometimes and crying out with a loud voice, he said, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God?" And I don't know. It's unclear who's.
Demons did. I don't think the man had anything to do with it. I think the demons did.
Well, that's what's unclear, because I think the demons are, at one point, the demons are told, "Legion, we are many." But then when the man speaks to Jesus right there, he says, "What have you to do with me?" Not us. Which if it was like we are many, like you got, and I guess what I'm saying here is you almost see this inner conflict between them. Yeah. It's like the man and this legion of demons are warring, and it's unclear. It might be the demons, it might be the man, but somebody winds up in front of Jesus. This is the one that actually has the ability to sort all this out.
Who said? Who addressed Jesus as a son of? Was it the man?
I think it's the legion.
The man have known that,
but Mexican. Here's the why are you asking these questions? Notice what it said when back in Jewish territory, he performs a miracle in Jewish territory, and what did it say? After that miracle, it said news about him spread. So what I'm thinking is, I don't think it like the news spread and then it stopped at the border. I think it did probably keep going. Maybe there's a little bit of knowledge of who he is. Maybe it's the demons that know, and that's who's answering. That it's probably a demon.
he was not in the population that would have heard him.
Yeah, possibly.
And besides that, they didn't have television to do the news, and so you didn't have a picture of him. So.
You telling me word didn't spread before television or telephone?
No.
Okay, I was about to say, like, I don't know about that. Like, sometimes it might have spread faster before telephone, right?
I'm talking about what he looked like, you know.
Oh yeah.
It's another, yeah.
Yeah, the demon, without doubt, the demon would have known. But the thing that I always wonder about is, would the head demon was in charge. It's just odd to me that if it's the demon that's completely in control, why does he draw close in proximity to Jesus? If he knows who Jesus is, yeah, it's almost like he's pulling him, right?
Jesus has another move.
Yeah, torment me. But here's the other thing I think about. So he's already. I don't know how that works in the spiritual realm. If the man that he's possessing, he knows who Jesus is, and he knows what happened to him, and so it's almost like, let me get in front of him and ask. Don't, and it's weird, and this just shows you demons don't, in my opinion, because he says, "I've heard of swine that are going to kill themselves."
Do you think that had something to do with, pork is
I've heard that argument before, but we're in Jewish territory. If it had been a Jewish person herding the pigs, you'd have been killing two birds with one stone. You're getting rid of the unkosher stuff. I've heard arguments that there's a whole bunch of possibilities here. Legion, what do we think of? When we hear any, but I mean, who used the term? The Romans. There's that the Roman legion in that area, you know what their symbol? The boar head. So there's some people, a little bit of subtle political commentary in Jesus, that he's destroying demons, but he's also have powers, which might be why people have the wrong idea. Oh, he was sending, he just, like to the Romans, but not how people think. He's not going to say, take up your army and fight. He's going to say, love your enemies, carry the pack the extra mile. There's a whole bunch of questions about why the pigs. A lot of people ask the question, what about those poor herd farmers? are pig farmers. They just lost 2,000, yeah, 200, 2,000 pigs, which that's a lot of pigs. Hey, if I lived on the Gentile side, I'd be running down there thinking I could save me some bacon. Pull it out of the water. It ain't been in there that long. I just start slicing it. And but yeah. Well, and that's the thing we're going to get to. Like, we'll talk about that in a minute. But they're looking at it like we can't afford Jesus to stay around. That's another question too. I've heard some people argue that he in some way invited them in, but I don't think that's absolutely has to be the case, because if you recall, there's other times where Jesus, like the little boy that was basically described almost like epilepsy, where he has the seizures and the demons possess him. I mean, and I think it even says he's been that way since birth. So surely the child didn't invite the demon in. So I think you can invite demons in. I don't want to. You can absolutely do that, but I think sometimes demons can. So this man, however he got it, and who's got Ephesians 6:10-12? Go ahead. New American Standard, I think. Why, you got New American Standard? What's the difference? It might be ESV then.
Okay. It's because you were asking about why about me. Well, this one says he kind of a loud voice. He said, "Why have to do with you, the Son of the Most High?" So instead, but this one turns it around, and when he saw it ran and fell down before him with a loud voice, he said, "What have you to do with me?"
Huh. So it's inverted, and yours is New American Standard. Yeah, mine's English Standard. I went back. Who else has one? King James. Who has King James or?
It's not here. No, demon is saying.
He's inverting who's asking the question, like first,
The
like.
demon is saying, "What have I to do with you?" And but this passage or this translation is saying, "What have you to do with me?"
Yeah, I've got what I have to do with you.
That's King James.
Is that the same as you have or the same I have?
Whatever.
But one thing, general comment as to why that might. The Greek language didn't work this way does, in the sense that for us, the word order matters in terms of how you make sense of it. Whereas for them, you can put a whole bunch of Greek words in the same sentence any number of ways, and it means the same thing. The difference in the order, for the most part, the difference in the order, what you want to emphasize. So any word that comes first or last is put in a position of emphasis, the first and last word. And so if you wanted to, like, because the way that, I don't know if y'all took Spanish, French, they have feminine and masculine, and they have all these different case endings. Well, Greek is the same type way. So one word modifies another, not because of its gender and if it's plural or singular. So you would know, okay, like I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, like Eos Theo would be son of God. Letters ending so that and God go together. God's son. They necessarily have to be next to each other. I say all that when they're interpreting it and translate it. to which one comes first. Yeah.
The new Jesus, Son of the Most High God. is what it says.
Translations going one way. I don't know if it changes the meaning dramatically, but a lot of times when they're I got a almost
And against the spiritual forces of the heavenly realms.
that song we sang, "No one ever cared for me like Jesus." I think after a while, it'd be very easy to be done and all the potential damage he's going to do rather than what's possessed him. And, you know, Paul, when he writes in Ephesians, he says, remember that part. I mean, think about this way. Jesus didn't see the Roman soldiers nailing into his hands and feet as his enemy. He saw the power that was helping them to do it, enabling them to do it, the power that wanted him nailed to a cross, the powers of this world, the power that was behind Rome, the power that had overtaken some of the Jewish leaders. He saw that as the enemy. I mean, because from the cross, they know not what they do. Stephen being stoned to death in Acts 7 says, Lord, do not hold this sin against them. Y'all, people throwing rocks at my head, they my enemy. Yeah. I mean, that's the way I'm tempted to look at it. Like, you just chunked a big rock at my head trying to kill me. You're my enemy. But spiritually speaking, Jesus teaches us, and Paul says there in Ephesians, it seems this way, but that's not really your enemy. Your enemy is what's controlling them. In other words, if you attack what's controlling them, that person stops being an enemy and actually starts being an ally. Like, notice, it's not just that this guy's problem. This guy goes from, I mean, this guy was probably one of Satan's top performers. If you think about it, like if Satan, all he's interested in doing is scaring people and wreaking havoc and causing chaos, this guy was probably one of his best performers. Like, got a whole scared out of their minds from being one of Satan's top performers to being one of Jesus' most vocal advocates. Like, Jesus turns the guy. It's not just that he reset to neutral. He transitions him from being an enemy to actually being a friend. Like, he goes from getting people doing work for Satan in many ways because of his possession to actually telling the good news of who Jesus is. All that's because Jesus saw not the man as the enemy, but the dissing him as the enemy. The potential there is, think about the impact in the testimony if you can turn one of Satan's tools into one of Jesus' greatest tools.
Look at you with Paul.
That was in my mind. I mean, Paul, when Paul showed up to preach, this guy sure does believe it. This guy used to be against this, dead set against it. And he's given up everything in his life now because he believes this. Like, think about, before he even said a word, the fact that he was corrects all of it. By removing the demon, now the guy is as much a testimony for Christ as he had been an agent of the devil when he had the demon. But you got to understand that it's the spiritual things that we're fighting. It's not the people. Go ahead.
I mean, I would assume they would also have been scared. I mean, if he's breaking, he's just sitting there having a conversation with Jesus, that implies that it was a stronger than physical strength.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, it was a next level supernatural type strength. And so I don't want to downplay this. There was a lot of justifiable reason for these people to be leery. Right. And that leads me to this next question. What scares the town people?
The loss of income.
There's a loss of income. That's one thing.
Well, they probably don't want no demon.
They don't want a demon. Like what would you say?
What they don't know.
What they don't know.
They don't understand what's happening.
They don't understand what's happening. And I think even kind of in that same vein, what's that old saying? I'd rather the devil I know than the devil I don't know.
I think I think sometimes the reason we don't reach out to people who have problems is because we're afraid of it, and afraid it might affect us.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Because there has been overflow from just this man's life. These people have lost swine. They've, but also to what you're saying, even sometimes we get so used to dealing with difficult people anymore, it scares us. Like it really scares us, and it throws us for a loop. And it's almost like, I'm not saying they were like, but they really didn't know how to adjust.
Yeah, they were already spooked.
Were spooked, and they didn't know how to adjust to life. Where this guy is sitting there in his right mind, fully clothed.
He doesn't stay that way. He goes back to his.
Demons are now like moving around looking for someone else to get. Is it like a communicable disease? Think about all they didn't know. But I just make that case because, yeah, I'm going to move my herd to the other side of the mountain in case there's more cast out. That to say,
I'm not so sure then.
the perfect.
At least we knew what was going
To
on.
navigate life. You know, we had kind of cornered him over here. We didn't try to, we learned he had kind of his space and we had our space and we could kind of get by that way, getting by. But now all of a sudden, the two have met and the guy's no longer what he used to be, although it's hard for us not to think of him that way. And I mean, all of us know people that if they made a serious mistake at some point in their life, to some degree that stays with them, right? People continue to identify him that way, right? This man, as much as he's had these demons and they've had to deal with him, it's very hard. And it seems like many of them make the decision, we'd rather just go back to the way things were. I mean, I'm not saying put the demon back in them, but before it happened, we'd rather you just move on down the road, Jesus. Like, it's a little too much. We don't know what to make of it. We weren't happy with the way they navigate that life. And we just don't know how to navigate this one. This one is scary because so much is new, so much has changed. And hey.
So is he getting, I've got this mental picture.
Sorry.
I know, it's kind
I
of.
can't do that.
Jesus getting on the boat with all these dead pigs floating around it. Is that?
The bow of the boat is like cutting through pig carcasses. And yeah, I don't know if they sink or float.
But no, I was wondering, is he living at the very spot where the pigs jumped in?
No, they jumped off a high cliff.
Bo's going to disagree with no matter what. If you ask the question, he's going to say no. Exactly. Like, but no, I mean, that's interesting because it does say he gets back in the boat, right? We're going to get to that in a minute. Jake, you've got John 1, 9 through 13. If you read that for me.
For he who lacks these qualities is blind or short-sighted, having forgotten his purification from his
Oh, wait, hold up. Let me see. Where here?
Give me your phone.
Oh, here you go. No, I got it. He was in I think he was over there in 1 John. Here's
Ain't that
John.
what it said?
No, it says John. John 1.
All right. There was the true light which coming into the earth enlightens every man. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, and the world did not know him. He came to his own, and those who were his own did not receive him. But as many as received him, them the right to become children of God, even of those who believed in his name, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God.
All right. So oftentimes we read that passage and when it says he came to his own, we just automatically equate that with Jews, which I think that's a lot of it. But Jesus created these people the same way he created the Jews. World, but it says the world, not everyone received the light. It says, but those who did receive it, they were given the right to be called children of God. Right here, you see that division. You've got the man who once was demon possessed, who clearly, but you've got all the other people who were scared by this difference that the light has made in his life, and they're like, yeah, keep on going, light, for a little while longer. And so it just shows you in real world terms what that looks like, because here's the thing. Faith always requires us to change. Always. Like no one, you can't say, I'm going to be a disciple of Jesus and just say that. But that's not what Jesus calls us to do, right? Daily take up your cross and follow me. So the thing is, even for those of us that aren't chained up in cemeteries with demons cutting ourselves, there still needs to be some change. And change might be scary. And it might be very tempting to say, just keep going down the road, Jesus. Life's not perfect, but I've gotten used to it the way it is.
And everybody's not going to like that change.
Everybody's not going to like that change.
Some people's going to want you to be like you were, just like you said earlier.
It's very hard to know because some people have become so accustomed to the way that it's easier.
Although it said that when he went back and told the people,
Yeah. There were others, and especially maybe the people whose pigs. And it's funny because sometimes from people outside of Israel and outside the Jewish people, then he got some of his own people. But I want to leave you with this last question because I know it's almost time to close.
Some of them might have been scared he was going to do it again too.
That was what someone else said a minute ago. Like the idea that, okay, is this a permanent exorcism or is this like a trial offer? Like 30 days of your money back. Like what happens if these demons come back and then all that's really happened? But there's been no. That's another question. Like one of the things that the people back then believed is that the demons came from the abyss, like from water. They didn't like hanging out. I mean, obviously they fished the lakes and stuff like that. They didn't see the lakes as places of recreation because
I may be wrong, but when Satan tempted Eve and them, they were cast out of
the garden. Yeah.
The garden. Well, he had a lot of angels also cast out too.
Yeah.
Is that some of the demons or is that something else?
200 of them.
I would think that's part of it. I don't know if that's the exact same group, but I think there's forces. And the other question goes, I think it's a force, but a lot of times when you say demon, they're thinking of like a little miniature devil, like an actual body and everything. And I think even what demon looks like, I think it's a spiritual force. And so like it takes on bodies, like it took on the body of this man, but it can be cast out. I think whether or not these specific ones were killed, I think the only way that the demonic is completely shut down is, I mean, you read in Revelation, like Satan and all his minions, demons, whatever you want to call them, are thrown into the abyss, right? And so Satan and all that works for him, they share the same fate. And I think really, if anything, what this is it's like a preview of coming attractions. Like repeatedly in Mark's gospel, there wasn't a long several verses description of the temptation, but it mentions it in Mark. But Luke and Matthew mention it in more detail. Every time Jesus comes up against either Satan himself, as in the temptation, or against Satan's demons, one side's clearly the victor and the other side's clearly not. And so I think that's more than anything, the message that's being sent here is Satans that have been wreaking havoc, that have been causing so much chaos, that have been sowing so much destruction, they're all going down.
Well,
They can't stand against Jesus.
They even say that, please do not torment us.
Yeah, they know that the ball is completely in his court. There's no way they can
They
withstand
know
it.
that he can do anything he wants to with them.
Yes. And I want to close this by just pointing out something that was, someone said it in the commentary I was reading, and I said, oh, that's interesting. In verse 2, this passage is bookended. Verse 2, stepped out of the boat. Immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit. Then flip over and look at verse 8. And as he was getting into the boat, the man who had begged him that he might be with him, and he did not permit him, but said to him, go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. Here's just a thought. This story, in many ways, runs parallel with a larger story. Okay? Bear with me. The upper story. Yeah, see, we're doing the story. And they always talk about the upper story and the lower story in the videos. Let's just say Jesus' arrival on the boat is Christmas. And let's say Jesus getting in the boat is the ascension. And so all the time in between him coming and leaving on the boat is the time that he's with these people. Some people are saved. Some people, that's scary. I don't want that. Some people receive him. Some people reject him. When he gets ready to leave, remember when they're all gathered around the ascension, I don't think they expressly say, hey, can we come with you? But one of the things he tells them is what? At least in Matthew 28.
Go to the works.
So here's Jesus getting ready to leave. In this instance, in Matthew 28, it's the ascension, but here it's at the boat. And he said, the Lord has done for you. So I think, like, if you want to consider the whole life and ministry of Jesus, in a way, it's been shrunk down into face to face with the demonic, with Satan, the same way that he does temptation, in the same way he does at the cross. I mean, you better believe Satan was really hoping the Garden of Gethsemane would get abandoned. Don't do it, Jesus, don't do it. But he didn't. I mean, it even says that he abandoned him and waited for a more opportune time. You think Satan wasn't in some way trying to force the issue in the Garden of Gethsemane?
Yeah.
I mean, that's you got him at his most vulnerable, perhaps, in that moment. And so I just thought that was interesting to think about this whole story with this man and the way Jesus came, changed lives, and then left. People received it. Some people didn't. The one who received it was given the mission of going and telling people about it. I think there's a lot of parallels between this man's experience and our experience. Like those of us left behind, Jesus has already got on the boat and left, so to speak. But those left behind are to tell the good news about what Christ has done. Like, tell all that the Lord has done for you. And so here's the thing. If the Lord has done something for you, you got to be telling people. He's blessed you in some way, maybe he blessed you materially, maybe he blessed you spiritually. I mean, he's blessed us in all types of ways, but whatever way the Lord has blessed you recently, whatever victory he's given you, whatever freedom he's given you, whatever release he's given you, you got to be telling people about it. I mean, that's really, we have the same mission as this guy. Our story, thankfully, ain't the same. We ain't been, I don't think y'all have, been chained up in a cemetery and all this other type of stuff, but it's very similar.
There's all sorts of chains.
There's all sorts of chains. And the whole thing is, what possessed this man for us until Jesus came, forced it to flee. We didn't force it to flee. And even right now, that passage you read in John 1, or the will of flesh, or by blood, but by the same thing for this man. We're going to sing this song, Burdens Are Lifted at Calvary, because I thought it was interesting. This man doesn't come across Jesus at Calvary, but Jesus does at Calvary the same thing that he does for this man. For all of us, he does it. What Jesus does at Calvary, what he suffers, the blood that's shed there, lifts our burdens the same way Jesus lifted the burden of this man. So we're going to sing 50 together. Burdens are lifted at Calvary. Our lonely hearts here, burdens are lifted at Calvary. At Calvary, 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 burdens are lifted at Calvary. Jesus is very near, troubled soul. The Savior can see and hear. Burden at Calvary, Jesus is very near. Burdens are lifted at Calvary, Calvary, Calvary. Burdens are lifted at Calvary. Jesus is very near. Well, let's stand and we'll pray the Lord's Prayer together as we're dismissed. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us as we forgive those who trespass. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen.